Hi everyone, welcome to the Your Life Unfiltered podcast with your hosts Kitu Kothari and Deepam Jain. In this podcast, we dig deep into the life experiences of our guests to connect the dots between their early experiences and what they're doing today. Today we have a very special guest, Prakruti. Prakruti has been working at HBO for the last couple of years as a marketer. She's actually done a lot of the marketing for the show House of Dragons on HBO. Prakruti, would you like to quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Prakruti. I work at HBO in marketing. I've actually only been at the company, I've only been in marketing for the past year, even though I majored in it. Before that, I was working in production, development, programming. So I've had a wide range of experiences within the entertainment industry, and it's been great.
Fantastic.
Well, Prakruti, thanks for joining. Before we talk about whatever you're doing today with HBO or your previous jobs as well, would love to go back a few years. Talk to us a little bit more about your early childhood, early upbringing. We talked about this a little bit. You grew up in India, and then you were very, at early age you moved to US. So how was your experience growing up as an immigrant kid in the US, and how some of those early motivation inspirations kind of stuck with you to do what you're doing today?
Yeah, so I was born in India. I moved here when I was 3. I moved around a lot as a kid. I lived in Jersey for a little bit, moved to Canada, back to Jersey, then finally in Pennsylvania. Majority of my life was in Pennsylvania, and it was very non-diverse. So it was almost like a culture shock every year of my life until I finally was in one spot. And in that one spot, I was different. And for me growing up, I always loved TV and film. And it just was like a huge part of my growth as a person. And it was kind of like the constant in my life. So part of me wanted to always work in it, but I didn't know if that was feasible. And when you're growing up and you're an immigrant and or like the first generation immigrant, you're kind of told like you have to do what will make you money and get that stability. And a lot of the times the career in the arts is not stable, but it is. You just have to find it and you got to figure it out. But I think once you find your footing and you don't give up, I think it is a stable career. But yeah, so I grew up in Pennsylvania. I went to Boston for college. And yeah, I feel like I'm like getting ahead of myself. Going back to my childhood, I also grew up watching Hindi films a lot. So I actually used to want to work in India and Mumbai and like work in Bollywood or whatever. And then I made a trip to Bombay one year, and I was like, I don't think I could survive because I realized I really could not speak Hindi well enough to live there. But I always loved Hollywood too. I grew up watching a lot of CW shows, a lot of superhero shows. Yeah, it's just always been a passion of mine, and somehow I figured out how to make it my career.
Okay. So I wanted to ask questions about the CW shows because I have some suspicions on which shows they were. Were Flash and Green Arrow, 2 of them?
How'd you know that?
Well, I'm just thinking of superhero shows on CW, and like those are 2 that come to mind.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, I watched I watched Green Arrow, Flash, Supergirl, DC Legends of Tomorrow, but also I feel like all the shows that when I was like in high school, everyone always watched CW shows. Like, I'm pretty sure Gossip Girl was on CW, Vampire Diaries, and even though now when I do tell people that I actually love CW shows, they're like, oh, CW shows? I'm like, yeah, they were great. They were like a big part of growing up, you know?
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. But I'm particularly interested in why superhero movies, because not everyone likes superhero movies. So like, what drew you to superhero movies? Or not movies, TV shows.
That's a good question. TV shows and movies. I'm really big into Marvel and DC as well. I don't know. I think it has to just do with like the world, and just superheroes are really cool. Like, I wish they existed in real life. I mean, they do probably, like, in everyday superheroes, like people who are saving lives, that kind of thing. But I think it's just so it's so creative. It's just comics in general. I think a lot of the reason these comics were written was because of like the history of the time and what was going on at that period in time. And there's a lot of cultural and like historical aspects to comics sometimes. Like I just learned that I don't know if you've seen Captain America Winter Soldier. There's this thing called Project Paperclip, which is essentially everything that happened in Captain America Winter Soldier was actually partially realistic. There were Nazis integrated into the government. I don't know if this is like a conspiracy theory and I sound like an idiot, but there's other people who like believe that this is a thing. And I just thought it's interesting because there's a lot of things in history that have influenced superheroes. And I mean, yeah, of course they're cool and just, I don't know. I've always just been amazed by them. I think even just the superheroes in like the Hindi films like Krish and things like that. It's just so over the top, and I would love to like be a superhero, play a superhero or something in a movie.
Yeah. So here's the question, Prakruti. Given all of that, who do you say is your favorite superhero, or who, if you were to get powers, which superhero would you choose?
That's tough.
I know.
I don't know how to pick just one.
How about
Okay, you
make
can
your
select
own
from
superhero?
multiple as well.
Yeah, how about make your own superhero?
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing, man.
I know what power I would choose. I would want telekinesis. I think that's just so useful. I used to watch. I don't know if you guys have heard of the show Heroes.
Yeah.
And in that show, one of the most powerful heroes was someone who had telekinesis, and just being able to move things with your hands and like, kill people, but that's not what I would do with my powers. It's just, there's so much power to that. And, but if I were to choose a superhero to be, I'm actually rewatching Miss Marvel, and she's Pakistani, and there's a whole cultural element to it. So of course her, but I love Batman. He's probably one of my favorite superheroes, and Spider-Man. Yeah, so those two.
Okay. All right. Cool. Yeah, I remember Heroes. That was like 2006 or so. It had Hayden Panettiere, Milo was Ventim, whatever his last name was. You talked about that Heroes. Right? You talked about the remake, because they remade it recently too, I believe.
Yeah, not the remake. The remake wasn't good.
Yeah. Gotcha.
So the
Yeah,
original.
so it looks like you've always been drawn to superheroes. That's really cool. That's really cool. And would you say that really attracted you to go into television? Like working in the television space?
I don't think that was always it was a part of it. I always loved superheroes, but it was more than that. It was other movies and shows, and when I was growing up, I watched a lot of Disney Channel, and like Boy Meets World and Full House, and all of those shows really also influenced my desire to create and be a part of the industry. I think I just, as cheesy as it might sound, my biggest purpose in wanting to work in the industry is that I want to be a part of something, create something that impacts someone's life in a positive way, whether it's, helping them feel less alone, or making them happy when they're feeling sad or depressed, and or making someone feel like they're being represented and their stories are being told, just like touching someone's life the way that TV and film has touched my life, and how crucial it was for me when growing up. Sometimes I feel like I learned so much about American culture just from watching Boy Meets World and Full House. Those shows really helped me understand, like, oh, this is what America's like. Like, this is how American families are, because as an immigrant, you don't always have the traditional experience that you see in these shows. So it kind of exposes you to what everyone else around you had growing up.
That actually makes a lot of sense. And it resonates with me particularly because I also grew up in the States. Right? I was born and raised in the States, so I know exactly what you're talking about. If you're growing up in a South Asian household, for example, it's the cultural upbringing you have is very different than other American households. So I completely get that, and I would say the same thing. It's you learn a lot of it through conversation with other people in school, etc. But then you also learn a lot of it about the differences through media, whether it be TV or movies or things like that.
Yeah.
100%. And I just say one thing about American television? It influences not just people living in America, but around the world. And I was just talking to a friend, and she was telling me, and she's living in India right now. She's like, "Oh, I feel like I'm living in a parallel universe where there's my Indian lifestyle and there's like whole American culture, which I get exposed to through TV shows and working with my colleagues who are based in US and things like that. So there is the phenomena actually just goes beyond USA and it just impacts the entire world, which is again a very beautiful thing if you really think about it from a grand scheme of things. So
I think also just even a show like Friends, it was such a worldwide phenomenon. Like,
yep.
Everyone loved it. It was just so not relatable, but just in a way relatable for everyone across the world. And it created this aspirational life that everyone wanted, like living in New York City with your 5 closest friends. And they touched a lot about that in the Friends reunion, which my old team that I worked on, they worked on it. And yeah, it's just amazing how certain shows can surpass language and culture and make everyone kind of come together as a community.
Absolutely. Well, that's actually a great segue into our next topic of discussion, which is, you're working as a marketer at HBO, and obviously without going into too many specifics, just curious to see, and going off of that international audience topic, how do you approach marketing to different types of global audiences, and what unique challenges and opportunities do these present to you, and how do you kind of overcome that? Any high-level thoughts on that?
Yeah, so my team focuses on the United States only. We have teams all over the world that, there's Latin America and there's Europe and East Asia, and they're all different. We work closely with these teams for marketing. We have like an overall plan for how we're going to market a show, and then we collaborate with people from different not departments, but the different markets, I guess. And they also can take it and run with it however they see fit, because they are the experts of their countries and their areas. So unfortunately, I don't get to work on a global campaign, but we all do work collaboratively to an extent.
Gotcha.
Okay. So what does that marketing process look like for an HBO show? So I understand it's just the US, but what media platforms? So are you talking, TV advertisements? Are you talking, social media ads, some other form of advertising, like magazines? Like, what is the split of spend when it comes to the marketing budget, out of curiosity?
I actually don't know how much I'm allowed to say on the way HBO operates and what they do, but in general with marketing, we focus on, of course, there's paid media, which includes ads and out of home, like the billboards that you see, or all those tiny little banners that you see when you go on a random website. That's a big part of it. But also social media and promotions and the posters that you might see for shows and trailers and teasers, and those are all big parts of it. Also, we work collaboratively with the PR teams, and there's so many different people involved in the whole process. My favorite part is probably the promotions, which essentially, so for House of the Dragon, we did an experiential not a pop-up, but at Comic-Con we had this huge, it was supposed to replicate not kind of King's Landing, but also just Dragonstone on the inside, if you're familiar with it. And you went through this whole experience and you got an egg, and then you went through each of the different rooms, and then at the end, you hatched your egg, and there was an AR app where you had your own dragon now, kind of like Pokemon Go. And
that's cool.
that app was like part of that whole experience.
Nice.
So I just love how cool that process is, and like kind of bringing to life this show that everyone's such a huge fan of, and getting and allowing people to experience kind of what it would feel like to be in that environment. We also did a partnership with the Natural History Museum in LA, where it was an exhibit with House of the Dragon stuff. There were eggs, there were costumes, there was a throne, a big dragon skull, and it was meant to be like an exhibit. We had to put a disclaimer, this is not real, but it was kind of an interesting way to showcase the props from the show. So those are probably some of my favorite parts about it. You can't always do promotions. It depends on how much of a fan base a certain show might have. But yeah, I feel like a lot of the times it's just, how can we best get people to watch this show? Like, how can we expose more people to this show? And whether it's a first season show or fourth season or, eighth season, it's just about figuring out. I feel like every campaign is different. Every single show that you work on is different, because you can't market everything the same way, and there's different amounts of attention given to certain things. We have a whole team dedicated to the analytics behind it, and then we kind of, they tell us how people are responding, and then we take that information and apply it to the next campaign or the next season.
Got it. I'm just curious, do you get to see the shows before they launch? I guess that's a yes, right?
Yeah. We get to read the scripts and watch only the ones that we're working on. So
Of course.
Something like White Lotus, I don't get to see before everyone else. Another team does. But yeah, it's a cool perk, getting to read the scripts and watch the show, but not being able to tell anyone anything is probably the hardest part.
Yeah,
yeah.
I can definitely see
That must have been really hard. Gotcha. How is the marketing process different for, let's say, social media campaign, in your opinion, versus, let's say, traditional media channels such as the TV ads and others?
So what we play on the TV ads or any kind of digital video channels, I think, so those are more like the teasers and the trailers, versus the stuff we put up on social media are more intentional. So like for TikTok, you'd put up, you have to really understand the different, like Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and understand what your voice is and what the tone of the show is, and how you're going to go about it. And so for each different, platform, you use a different type of video, or you make edits to it so that it can kind of fit the voice of the platform as well, because there are certain things that you might put up on Twitter that you wouldn't put up on TikTok, because it's just not gonna resonate. It's too long, and you need more short form content on TikTok. But every campaign has elements of both the
Right.
Paid media that we do with ads and such, and then also the social media. It just depends. Sometimes, like, we have a whole brand team dedicated to running HBO and HBO Max profiles across all the platforms. But for certain shows like House of the Dragon, we have our own profiles. And same with like Succession that I'm working on now. Then you have your own voice for those profiles. It's kind of.
And I'm guessing the audience as well obviously is different for each of the show, right? And you have that piece of information from the analytics team, right? So let's say certain demographic, certain age group for House of Dragon will be different from, let's say, Succession or White Lotus, for example. And then those are the kind of inputs that are also kind of fed into the whole marketing process for these channels as well, right?
Yeah, yeah. Demographics, age, all of those things really do factor into how we market. But I think really the overall purpose is, well, we already have this audience. How do we get this other audience? How do we get maybe younger skewing people or more, more women? How do we get that other? It's good to know who
Those are
we already have, and
right,
who
right.
do we need to get, and how do we get them?
Got it. Got it. That makes sense. All right. So I guess moving on, Prakruti, do you have any advice for any aspiring marketers who are trying to break into the entertainment industry? What should they think about? How should they approach?
Yeah, specifically the entertainment industry, marketing,
Yes.
and yeah. So I graduated and I did not end up. I wanted to start off in marketing. That's what I was hoping for, but that's just not the way it really works. You just either have to have an inside person that you know, or just get very like right place, right time kind of situation. So I actually worked a little bit as a production assistant, and then I worked at Hearst magazines as a video partnerships coordinator. Not really as creative as I was hoping to be. And then I went back to production. I worked at Bustle as a video fellow, which was essentially an in-house production assistant. So, and then after that, I moved on to HBO Max, where I worked in development and programming, where my team was deciding what shows get made. They were taking pitches and then kind of following the whole show through. And that's when I lived in LA, so it was a lot more of the production side of things.
Gotcha.
And then I finally started in marketing, I think like 4 years after I graduated. And so I guess the whole point is that if it doesn't work out right off the bat, it's not going to work out. You'll find your way to whatever role you want to be at. And who knows, maybe marketing is forever for me, or maybe I'll move on to something else. I don't know. But I think just being flexible and like going with the flow and trying different things and getting all the experiences that you can, however you can, all influences wherever you want to go. So like all of my previous experiences have helped me to get the job that I have right now, and help me every day to kind of do this job. No path is linear. It's just, you're just always trying to find your way and trying to find what the right move is, but it's just making sure that you're constantly absorbing everything you can around you. In terms of like the way, I think if for people in college, internships, like you should definitely always try to do internships in college, at whether it's like wherever it is, it's helpful to just get that kind of experience. I was lucky enough to have internships at Discovery, NBC, Turner. And then that helped me kind of, even then I had trouble getting back into the industry after those internships, like getting a full-time job at like an NBC or Warner Brothers. So it's just a lot of patience. And a lot of the time starting as an assistant is a great way to get in. There's like a whole different kind of mindset, LA versus New York assistants, but in LA, everyone starts as an assistant. And I didn't know that until I moved to LA. Like you have to start as an assistant. And like at agencies and things like that. While in New York, I don't know if it's less common, but it's just not, I just wasn't as exposed to it. But that's also a great way to start, because you're an assistant and you could kind of absorb everything from your executive and learn how they you basically have a built-in mentor if they're an actual good, manager, then they'll hopefully properly teach you how to get into the position that you want to be in and teach you everything they know.
Yeah,
got it.
That actually reminds me of the show. I forgot what the name of the show is, but it's the one with Ari Gold. Like the character's Ari Gold. Entourage. That's the one. So it's like the show is with about like a talent management company where like the guy has like assistants, and basically by being an assistant, they're able to learn how to be an agent and then eventually become an agent. So it's like, that's only one piece of the entire show, but that's what that reminds me of. And that show was also based in LA. So I completely got what you're saying about how when it comes to like the entertainment industry, a lot of people start off as assistants first, work their way up, absorb as much knowledge as possible, build connections while in the assistant role, and then go from there. It's interesting because I didn't realize it was like that just on the West Coast. I thought it was based on the show. I figured it was everywhere, but it's interesting.
No, it is everywhere. I just wasn't exposed to it until I went to LA. And I wish I had been earlier, because I would have definitely wanted to start off as an assistant a lot earlier, because then you can move up earlier. But that was probably one of the best experiences I had, to be able to kind of be a fly on the wall of all these like huge conversations, and learn how to be an exec through the amazing people that were on my team, and hopefully one day lead the way they did,
Yeah, that's amazing.
That makes sense. So here's the question. Would you, if given an opportunity, would you like to be in front of the camera as well? I know you're being on the behind a lot.
That's a good question. Yes, actually. When I was growing up, I actually really wanted to be an actor.
Oh, really? Okay.
I never told anyone. I never admitted it. I don't know. I was just scared of judgment, or I was scared of being told, no, you can't do this, or, it's not allowed, or just hearing anyone, or even my parents say to me, like, is that really feasible? Or I didn't need anyone else kind of hurting my confidence when I wasn't really sure myself if I could even do it.
I see.
But when I did finally tell my parents, they were so supportive. And I was like, oh, what was I afraid of this whole time? I mean, at this point, I was working full time. So I have been acting on the side. I've been taking classes ever since I moved to LA. I've gotten the opportunity to do a couple things on camera and get representation, but it's not nearly like a full-time thing or anywhere close to it, but I enjoy it and it makes me happy and it allows me to creatively express myself. It's just another way I get to be creative.
Amazing. Do you have any kind of dream roles that you would like to play, like a certain person in a certain show, or are you just open to anything?
A superhero.
I was gonna guess that.
Yeah, I was actually gonna totally say that, but then I wanted you to say it first. And for a suggestion for a superhero, I was gonna say Miss Marvel, since you mentioned her earlier.
Yeah. I mean, I think the current actor who plays her is amazing. She's so great. So can't compare. But I would love to play it in an Indian superhero in Marvel or DC. And like, I love the way Miss Marvel kind of weaves the culture into the show. And it's funny because a lot of people just didn't know about the partition and India and Pakistan and how they were one country and all of that. And I guess fair, like, you don't really learn world history in America, not that well, but I feel like sometimes a lot of Indian people kind of didn't really know about the partition either. And I was like, oh, you don't know about this? It scarred our country for a long time. So I really love that. As sad as it was, like, it really exposed the world to this like big historical moment that happened in our countries. And I think that's what I really loved about it. And the representation, like, it's great. It feels good to be seen.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And actually, you can still play Miss Marvel because now you have the whole multiversal concept out there, right, in Marvel. So you can be Miss Marvel from another universe.
That's very true. Maybe one day.
Prakruti, this next segment, we call it Rapid Fire, is just to get to know you a little bit better on a personal level. So, just first thing that comes to mind, would love to hear your answers. And when you're ready, let's just jump right in.
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right. So let's start with an easy one. Tea or coffee?
That's really hard. Coffee. I think.
Oh, man.
If it's chai, then chai. But coffee.
Okay. Okay, all right, that makes sense. Makes sense. Okay. Morning person or night owl?
Night owl.
Okay. Mountains or beaches?
Beaches.
Okay. Okay. What's your favorite comfort food?
Dal tadka.
Good one.
I love that answer. What's your favorite virtue in others?
Loyalty.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. What's your biggest pet peeve?
Dishonesty.
Okay. Okay. Um, I think we've already talked about this one. But typically our next question is, what's your, actually, no, not this one. What's your secret superpower?
What's my secret super? I don't really get hangovers.
What?
Wow.
Really?
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, it would have to have been a really bad night for me to actually get a hangover, but I don't really get hangovers. But that's also just maybe in like 10 years, I'll be like, it'll all hit me at once.
Oh yeah, it's like maybe you get too comfortable with
Accumulated.
the idea, and then when your metabolism slows at some point, you're like, "What was I doing?"
Yeah.
Oh my God. But it is a superpower for now, so good for you.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess we can skip the next one. We already talked about that. So Prakruti, what's next for you from here on?
I don't know. The possibilities are endless.
Mhm.
I would love to continue to be at HBO, and you can't really, once you're at HBO, like what's better? Nothing. But just like exploring all the different things that I kind of want to do with my life, and
Mhm.
whether it's development and programming or acting or marketing, just trying to figure out my way and seeing what makes me happy. I don't think there's ever going to be, for me personally, one thing that I'm going to ever be doing at a time. I just am interested in too many things. So maybe just the biggest thing for me in the next 5 years is to not get burnt out.
Okay, got it. That's actually really good
Got
though,
it. That makes
because
sense.
it sounds like you're keeping yourself open to different opportunities, right? So you're keeping like you want to continue to be in marketing at HBO in some capacity, but then you also want to go into acting and other things that make you happy. So that's good. It's like you're having more of like a multifaceted approach to your future.
Yeah, it's too much of a risk to focus on just one thing, in my opinion. I feel like it would just be too boring. And there's just too many things to explore and such little time. So you kind of just have to do it all, which is not to say like overwork yourself and,
Mhm.
get burnt out, but do what makes you happy to an extent. Like there's a lot of people who have full-time jobs and then they're also content creators on the side. Like they're making hilarious TikToks and whatever. As long as it makes you happy, like it doesn't really feel like work,
That's the same question you're about to ask, Deepa. I was gonna ask, have you thought about content creation? Because it's kind of like a watered down version of acting, right? It's like you can do acting on different skits that you come up with, etc.
I did. When COVID pandemic and like the quarantine happened, I briefly thought that I would start like that's when like TikTok was going off, and so I thought I would make TikToks, but it was just a lot of it wasn't bringing me as much joy as it was kind of just a little bit stressful sometimes, and also that one-on-one feedback of people being able to comment things. I'm not even sure now if I'm ready to have people comment. And so being able to see that and see people saying things, I know there's always internet trolls and things like that, but I think I've worked on getting thick skin over time that maybe now I could handle it, but it's just about finding the time because it takes a lot of work to think of these ideas and then to shoot it and then to perfect it and then engage with people who comment and things like that.
Yeah, I can totally see that. It's basically like a full-time job if you do it at a regular frequency, like 3-4 times a week. It's a lot of work.
Yeah. that's the only way to like keep it going. If you're gonna be a content creator, you have to do it continuously, and so that people who want to watch your stuff know to expect it to come out, and they can't just be like, oh, it comes out once every 2 weeks. That's just not consistent enough.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And we've actually interviewed a couple of content creators. I don't know if you know, Skachi is one of them, Vic Krishna, Devin Patel, and they've all kind of talked about their process. It's definitely really, really grueling, right? It's not easy at all, as opposed to what lay people might think that it is. So it takes a lot of effort to get it done, and producing high quality content is just takes a lot of time and effort. So that makes a lot of sense.
And putting yourself out there. I think that's also a big
100%.
thing that people forget. They find it easy to judge someone and like comment and say mean things, but it takes a lot of courage to put yourself out there, hoping that you're gonna, strike joy for someone else. And it's just, I don't know if I have that courage just yet.
Got it.
Hey, but you're building it out, right? With all the stuff you're doing with acting, taking acting classes and all that. I feel like you're building it up, because I'm sure in acting classes it's like you get more skillful, and then when you get more skillful at acting, then that can translate into better acting in skits, for example, as content creation, or acting on the big screen, etc. So I feel like you may not be there yet, but you're doing all the right steps to get there.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, great. So, Prakruti, we are actually reaching towards the end of our discussion. But before we wrap, do you have any recommendations for our listeners? A recommendation could be a piece of media. It could be a piece of media that you're working on, or like a book, movie, TV show, or podcast, or it could be general advice as well.
Well, I tell everyone that I meet to watch House of the Dragon, not just because I work for it, but because I love Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon and that whole thing. I'm working on Succession right now, and it's phenomenal. It's the final season, comes out March 26th. This is me marketing it. But watch every HBO show. That's what I would tell everyone. I think it's top tier content, and I'm not just saying that because I work for it. I always wanted to work for HBO before I just love what HBO does, Something I'm watching right now is The Romantics, and I think it's a very interesting look into the Hindi film industry, as they prefer to call it, not Bollywood. So yeah, those things. I recently read The Alchemist, and I feel like everyone read this in high school except me, and I loved it, and it was life-changing, and I would recommend that for anyone who's in their 20s and like trying to figure out what to do with their life. And then I actually have like one of everything. So advice that I would give someone is to not give up. I feel like I say this a lot, but actually something I learned from my acting teacher is you can't fail if you never stop trying. And so that's kind of like my mindset. And eventually, like, you just enjoy the journey too. That's also part of The Alchemist, enjoying the journey, because that journey helps you, whatever destination you do get to, the journey is the best part. It's where you learn, it's where you grow, it's where you become who you are as a person. So that's something I'm working on, is enjoying the journey and not being like, oh, I wish I was already at this place in my life, or I wish I was, an actor acting in something. So I'm working on enjoying the journey more.
Okay. Wow.
Thanks for sharing that.
Really good advice. I like that. Well, that really does conclude our discussion here. Thank you so much for joining and sharing a little bit about your story, your thoughts, your experience working at HBO, as well as your future aspirations. For those of you listening, thank you so much for tuning in. And if you guys are not already subscribed to Your Life Unfiltered on YouTube, please be sure to do so. With that said, thank you all for joining, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.